She was slumped against a lamppost on Christmas Eve, designer coat torn and blood on her temple. A CEO worth millions, unrecognized and alone in the snow. He was just a single dad walking home with his curious daughter after a late shift, searching for warmth they could barely afford, until his little girl said something that stopped him cold. "Daddy, look at her fancy coat." What he discovered beneath that coat, the truth she whispered through chattering teeth, and the choice he made that frozen night changed 3 lives forever. But what came after the secrets unveiled, the price of kindness, and the love nobody saw coming will leave you breathless. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The snow had started falling just after sunset on Christmas Eve, blanketing the small mountain town of Ashwood in a silence so complete it felt like the world was holding its breath. Most families were already gathered around fireplaces, wrapping last-minute gifts or setting out cookies for Santa, but not everyone had the luxury of warmth and tradition. Landon Pierce, 37 years old, single father and night shift manager at the Ashwood Diner, was walking home with his 7-year-old daughter, Maya. His shift had run late because someone called in sick, and now they trudged through ankle-deep snow, their breath forming white clouds in the freezing air. Maya wore mittens 2 sizes too big, hand-me-downs from a co-worker's daughter, and her purple jacket was patched at the elbows. "Daddy, is Santa going to find our apartment?" Maya asked, her voice muffled by the scarf wrapped around her face. "Of course, sweetheart," Landon replied, adjusting his grip on the paper bag containing their Christmas Eve dinner, leftover meatloaf and mashed potatoes from the diner. "Santa always knows where the good kids are." Maya seemed satisfied with that answer, skipping ahead through the snow despite her worn boots. Landon watched her with a mixture of pride and heartache. She never complained, never asked why they didn't have what other kids had. She just smiled through everything, the way her mother used to before the accident took her 3 years ago. They turned down Maple Street, the shortcut that led to their apartment building. The streetlights here were older, casting pools of amber light every 50 feet. Between those pools, the darkness felt thick and impenetrable. The wind picked up, howling through the empty street. That's when Maya stopped. "Daddy, look!" Landon hurried forward, following her pointing finger. At first, he thought it was just a pile of discarded clothing near the base of a lamppost, but then he saw it move, a slight shift, a tremor. "Stay back, Maya," he said gently, handing her the food bag. He approached slowly, his heart hammering. As he got closer, the shape became clearer. It was a woman slumped against the metal post, her head tilted at an unnatural angle. She wore what had once been an expensive coat, cream-colored cashmere, now stained with dirt and something darker, blood. "Ma'am?" Landon knelt down, his jeans immediately soaking through from the snow. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" No response. Her face was pale, lips tinged blue. A nasty gash ran across her temple, already crusted with dried blood. Her hair, once probably styled perfectly, hung in tangled strands around her shoulders. But even in this state, there was something striking about her, an elegance that poverty and circumstance couldn't quite erase. "Daddy, look at her fancy coat," Maya whispered, edging closer despite his warning. Landon reached out and gently touched the woman's shoulder. She was ice cold. His pulse quickened. He checked for a pulse at her neck and found one, faint and irregular. But there. "Call 911, he said, then remembered his phone had died an hour ago. Of course. He looked around desperately. The street was empty. Every house had curtains drawn, lights twinkling inside, oblivious to the emergency unfolding just beyond their windows. The woman's eyes fluttered open, just barely. They were a striking green, even dulled by pain and cold. She looked at him without recognition, without understanding. "Please," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Don't let them find me." "Who?" Landon asked, leaning closer. "Who's looking for you?" But her eyes had already closed again. Her breathing grew shallower. Landon made a decision in that moment, the kind of decision that would reshape everything that followed. He couldn't leave her here. Even if he ran to find help, she might not last another 10 minutes in this cold. The nearest hospital was 8 blocks away, and emergency services on Christmas Eve were notoriously slow in Ashwood. "Maya, honey, I need you to be very brave right now," he said, turning to his daughter. "Can you carry the food and walk right beside me?" "What are you doing, Daddy?" "We're taking her home." Maya's eyes widened, but she nodded. That was the thing about his daughter. She trusted him completely, even when nothing made sense. Landon slipped his arms under the woman, one beneath her knees, the other around her back. She was lighter than he expected, too light. As he lifted her, her head lolled against his chest, and he could feel how violently she was shivering. He stood carefully, adjusting his grip. "Stay close to me, Maya. Don't run ahead." They moved as quickly as Landon dared, which wasn't very quick at all. The woman's dead weight threw off his balance, and the snow made every step treacherous. Maya stayed right at his side, clutching the food bag with one hand and holding onto his jacket with the other. "Is she going to be okay?" Maya asked after a block. "I don't know, sweetheart, but we're going to try." 2 blocks later, Landon's arms were burning. 3 blocks, and he had to stop to catch his breath, leaning against a brick wall while Maya stood guard. The woman stirred again, mumbling something he couldn't make out. "Hang on," he whispered to her. "Just hang on a little longer." By the time they reached the Bradford apartments, a 4-story walk-up that had seen better decades, Landon was drenched in sweat despite the cold. He kicked at the door until Maya managed to pull it open, and then they were climbing the stairs to the 3rd floor, Landon's legs screaming with every step. Their apartment was small, just 2 bedrooms, a cramped kitchen, and a living room barely big enough for a couch and coffee table. But it was warm. Landon had left the space heater on, a small luxury he usually avoided to save on the electric bill. He carried the woman to his bedroom, the only room with a proper bed, and laid her down as gently as he could. Maya appeared in the doorway, eyes wide. "Get the first aid kit from under the bathroom sink," Landon said, "and bring every blanket we have." While Maya scurried off, Landon carefully removed the woman's ruined coat. Underneath, she wore what had once been an elegant black dress, now torn at the hem and stained. There was a name tag still pinned to her chest, partially obscured by dirt. He wiped it clean and read the elegant script. "Lila Curtis, CEO, Hartwell Industries." His breath caught. Hartwell Industries. Even in Ashwood, people knew that name. It was one of the largest tech companies in the region, worth billions. And this woman, bleeding and half frozen on his bed, was apparently running it. What in the world had happened to her? Maya returned with an armful of blankets and the small red first aid kit. Landon covered Lila with every blanket they owned, then carefully cleaned the wound on her temple. It was deep, but had stopped bleeding. She'd need stitches, probably. Professional medical care, definitely. But something about her whispered plea echoed in his mind. Don't let them find me. Who was she running from? And what would happen if he called the authorities? For now, he decided, she needed to survive the night. Everything else could wait until morning. Lila Curtis woke to unfamiliar sounds, not the soft hum of her penthouse's climate control system or the distant traffic of downtown. This was closer, more intimate, the creak of old floorboards, the rattle of pipes, voices, one deep and male, the other high and bright, belonging to a young girl. She tried to open her eyes, but they felt glued shut. Her head throbbed with a pain so intense it made her stomach lurch. When she finally managed to crack her eyelids open, harsh morning light stabbed through the window, making her wince. Where was she? The room was small, dominated by the bed she was lying in. The walls were bare except for a single framed photo, a man and woman on a beach, laughing. The furniture was old but clean, clearly well loved, despite its wear. This was not a hotel. This was someone's home. Panic surged through her. She tried to sit up, but her body protested violently. Every muscle ached. Her temple felt like it was being split open from the inside. "Easy," a voice said from the doorway. She turned her head, too quickly, and immediately regretted it. A man stood there, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing jeans and a flannel shirt. He had kind eyes, the color of dark coffee, and a face that looked like it had seen its share of hardship but hadn't turned bitter because of it. "Who are you?" Lila's voice came out as a rasp. "Where am I?" "I'm Landon Pierce," he said, approaching slowly, hands visible, non-threatening. "You're in my apartment. My daughter and I found you last night on Maple Street. You were unconscious in the snow. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story." Fragments of memory flickered. The gala, the argument, running, falling, cold, so much cold. "I need to leave," she said, trying again to sit up. This time she managed it, though the room spun sickeningly. "You're not going anywhere until you're stable," Landon said firmly. "You have a concussion probably. That cut on your head could use stitches. And you were hypothermic when I found you. You should have called an ambulance. You asked me not to." Lila froze. Had she? She had no memory of speaking to him at all. "What exactly did I say?" "You said, 'Don't let them find me.'" Landon crossed his arms. "Want to tell me who they are?" Before she could answer, a small face peeked around the doorframe. A little girl with dark braids and curious eyes stared at her. "Daddy, is she awake?" the girl asked. "She is, Maya. Remember what we talked about? Give her some space." But Maya was already stepping into the room, clutching something in her hands. "I made you breakfast," she announced proudly. "It's toast with peanut butter and a glass of water because Daddy said you need to drink lots." Lila stared at the offering, completely unprepared for this tiny human's earnestness. "Thank you," she managed. Maya set the plate and glass on the nightstand, then studied Lila with an intensity that would have made most adults uncomfortable. "Your coat is really fancy. Are you a princess?" Despite everything, the pain, the confusion, the fear, Lila almost smiled. "No, not a princess." "Then what are you?" "Maya," Landon said gently. "Let's give Miss Curtis some privacy." "Curtis?" Lila asked sharply. Landon gestured to the nightstand where her ruined coat lay folded. On top of it was her name tag, still pinned but now cleaned. Her stomach dropped. "So you know who I am." "I know who your name tag says you are," Landon replied carefully. "But I don't know why the CEO of Hartwell Industries was unconscious in the snow on Christmas Eve. And I don't know who you're hiding from. But yeah, I know your name." Lila pressed her palms against her eyes, trying to think past the pounding headache. This was bad. This was very bad. If anyone found out where she was, if the board discovered, she'd vanished. If Bennett realized, she'd run. "I need to make a phone call," she said. "My phone's in the kitchen. But maybe first you should eat something. You look like you haven't had a meal in days." He wasn't wrong. The last thing she remembered eating was a few bites of canapé at the gala before everything went wrong. How long ago was that? She glanced at the window. Daylight. Christmas Day, probably. What day is it? December 25th. Christmas morning. Landon smiled slightly. Merry Christmas, by the way. The absurdity of it all. Waking up in a stranger's apartment on Christmas morning, being served toast by a 7-year-old, realizing she'd been missing for almost 12 hours, hit her all at once. She should call her assistant. She should call her driver. She should return to her penthouse and pretend none of this had happened. But the memory of why she'd run in the first place stopped her cold. The gala. The announcement Bennett was planning to make. The hostile takeover hidden in a merger proposal. The realization that her own board had been conspiring behind her back. That the company her father had built was about to be stripped from her piece by piece. She'd excused herself to the restroom and never returned. She'd walked out of the Grand Belmont Hotel, through the kitchens, and into the night. No security, no driver, no plan. Just blind panic and the overwhelming need to disappear. She must have walked for hours. She vaguely remembered stopping at a convenience store, buying a bottle of water she never drank. Then nothing until the snow and the cold, and a man's voice saying her name. "Hey," Landon's voice cut through her spiraling thoughts. "You're safe here. Whatever happened, whoever you're running from, they don't know you're here. Take a breath." Lila looked at him, really looked at him. He didn't look like someone who rescued corporate executives as a hobby. He looked tired, worn down by life but still standing. The kind of person who did what needed to be done without expecting anything in return. "Why did you help me?" she asked. "Because you needed help. That's it?" "That's it," he shrugged. "My daughter and I don't have much, but we have a warm place and some food. Seemed wrong to leave you out there when we could offer that." Lila felt something crack inside her chest, some wall she'd built brick by brick over years of boardroom battles and corporate warfare. This man, this stranger, had carried her through the snow because it was the right thing to do. He hadn't asked for compensation or recognition. He'd just done it. "Thank you," she whispered. Landon nodded. "Eat your toast. Then we'll figure out what comes next." He left, pulling Maya gently with him, though the girl kept looking back at Lila with undisguised fascination. The door closed with a soft click, and Lila was alone. She picked up the toast with trembling hands. It was slightly burnt at the edges, the peanut butter spread unevenly by inexperienced fingers. It was the most beautiful thing she'd seen in months. As she ate, She stared at the framed photo on the wall. The couple looked so happy, so unguarded. When was the last time she'd felt that way? When was the last time she'd trusted anyone enough to look that vulnerable? The woman in the photo had Landon's eyes. His wife, probably. Past tense, based on the fact that she wasn't here. Lila closed her eyes and made a decision. She wouldn't run. Not yet. She would stay here, in this tiny apartment with this kind stranger and his bright-eyed daughter, until she figured out what to do next. But first, she needed to understand just how much danger she was in, and whether staying here put Landon and Maya in danger too. By mid-morning, Lila had managed to stand, though her legs felt like they belonged to someone else. Landon had insisted she stay in bed, but she couldn't bear lying down anymore. She needed to move, to think, to reclaim some sense of control over her spiraling situation. She found them in the kitchen, a narrow galley-style space with chipped countertops and appliances that looked older than Maya. Father and daughter were sitting at a small table barely big enough for two, working on what appeared to be a jigsaw puzzle. Christmas music played softly from an ancient radio on the windowsill. "You should be resting," Landon said when he noticed her in the doorway. "I've rested enough." Lila leaned against the doorframe, conserving her energy. "We need to talk." Maya looked up from the puzzle, her expression brightening. "Do you want to help? It's a picture of a snow globe." "Maybe later, sweetheart," Lila said, surprised by how easily the endearment came. "I need to speak with your father first. Adult stuff." Maya's face fell slightly, but she nodded with the resignation of someone who'd heard that phrase before. Landon stood, ruffling his daughter's hair as he passed. "Keep working on the edges. I'll be right back." He guided Lila to the living room, a space so small the sagging couch took up most of it. A plastic Christmas tree stood in the corner, decorated with handmade ornaments and a string of lights with 3 bulbs burned out. Underneath it sat exactly 2 presents, both wrapped in newspaper comics. Lila's chest tightened. This family had almost nothing, and yet they'd taken her in without question. "Sit before you fall over," Landon said, not unkindly. She lowered herself onto the couch, grateful for its support. Landon took the worn armchair across from her, his expression patient but guarded. "I need to explain," Lila began, then stopped. Where did she even start? "What I'm about to tell you is going to sound insane. Try me. My normal meter broke a long time ago." She took a breath. 6 months ago, Bennett Voss approached our board about a merger between Hartwell Industries and his company, Titan Tech. On paper, it looked like a smart move, combining resources, expanding market share, the usual corporate talking points. Landon nodded, though she suspected half these terms meant nothing to him. "What I didn't know," she continued, "was that Bennett had been secretly buying up shares through shell companies. By the time I figured it out, he and 3 of my board members had enough votes to force the merger through. It wasn't a merger. It was a hostile takeover disguised as one." "Let me guess," Landon said. "You were about to lose your company. Not just lose it, be erased from it." Bennett had plans to restructure everything, rebrand, and push me out within 6 months. The company my father spent his life building would be gutted and sold for parts. She could hear the bitterness in her own voice, and hated it. She'd spent years cultivating a professional demeanor, never letting emotions cloud her judgment. But sitting here in this threadbare apartment, something about Landon's steady presence made the mask slip. "The gala last night was supposed to be a Christmas celebration," she went on. "But Bennett planned to announce the merger during his toast. A done deal, presented to me and the public simultaneously. I overheard him rehearsing with his assistant. He was laughing about it, calling it a Christmas gift to the shareholders." Landon's expression darkened. "So you ran." I panicked. I've never panicked in my life, but I did last night. I just walked out the back entrance and kept walking. I wasn't thinking. I just knew I couldn't be there when he made that announcement. I couldn't stand on stage and smile while he destroyed everything. The silence that followed was thick with unspoken questions. Finally, Landon leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "How'd you end up on Maple Street?" "That's nowhere near the Belmont." "I don't remember most of it. I walked for hours, I think. I remember crossing through the warehouse district, then nothing until I woke up here." "Someone hurt you? That gash on your head didn't happen from falling." Lila's hand instinctively went to her temple, feeling the tender skin beneath the bandage Landon had applied. "I remember something. A man. He grabbed my purse. I tried to hold on to it, and he shoved me. I hit something metal, A dumpster, maybe. After that, nothing. Landon's jaw clenched. You were mugged and left for dead on Christmas Eve. I suppose I was. Do you have any idea how close you came to not making it through the night? I'm aware. Lila met his eyes. I'm also aware that you saved my life. You didn't have to. Most people wouldn't have. Most people aren't walking home at midnight with their daughter and finding someone dying in the snow. Despite everything, Lila almost smiled. Fair point. Maya's voice drifted in from the kitchen, singing along to Jingle Bells with enthusiastic if off-key gusto. The sound seemed to soften something in Landon's expression. Here's my question, he said quietly. What happens now? Because I'm guessing the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company can't just vanish without consequences. People are looking for you. Probably. My assistant, definitely. Security, maybe the police by now. And Bennett. Lila hesitated. He'll either be looking for me to salvage the announcement, or he'll use my disappearance as evidence that I'm unstable, unfit to lead. Either way, he wins. Unless you go back and fight. With what? He has the votes. The board is compromised. Even if I contested the merger, it would take months of legal battles I'm not sure I'd win. My father's legacy would be dragged through every courthouse and media outlet in the state. Landon was quiet for a long moment, studying her with those steady dark eyes. Then he said something that surprised her. So you're done fighting? I didn't say that. Then what are you saying? Lila realized she didn't have an answer. She'd run because fighting seemed impossible in that moment. But sitting here now, warm and safe despite everything, she felt something stirring inside her. Not resignation, something sharper, anger maybe, or determination. I don't know, she admitted. I don't know what I'm saying. Okay. Landon stood and stretched, his back cracking audibly. Then here's what's going to happen. You're going to stay here until you figure it out. Lila blinked. I can't ask you to do that. You're not asking. I'm offering. It's Christmas. You're hurt, and you clearly need time to think without people hunting you down. So you'll stay in my room, I'll take the couch, and we'll figure out the rest as we go. Your daughter will be thrilled to have a house guest. Trust me, Maya's already planning all the ways to include you in our extremely modest Christmas traditions. This is too much. You don't even know me. Landon moved toward the kitchen, then paused in the doorway. You're right. I don't know you, but I know what it looks like when someone needs help and has nowhere else to go. Been there myself once. Someone helped me when I needed it. Now I'm helping you. That's all there is to it. He disappeared into the kitchen, leaving Lila alone with her thoughts and the off-key sound of Christmas carols. She looked at the plastic tree with its homemade ornaments, at the newspaper-wrapped presents, at the worn furniture and peeling wallpaper. This family had so little, and yet Landon was offering her something no amount of money could buy. Sanctuary. For the first time since the gala, Lila felt the tight knot in her chest begin to loosen. She didn't know what would happen tomorrow or the day after. She didn't know how to fix the disaster her life had become. But for now, on Christmas morning, she was safe. And maybe that was enough. Christmas afternoon passed in a way Lila Curtis had never experienced. There was no catered meal, no staff hovering at the edges of mahogany-paneled dining rooms, no obligation to make small talk with investors and board members. Instead, there was simplicity. Honest, unadorned, beautiful simplicity. Landon made grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup from a can. They ate at the small kitchen table, Maya chattering about the snow fort she wanted to build once the storm passed, and how she hoped her teacher, Miss Robertson, got the scarf she'd made from yarn scraps. You made your teacher a present? Lila asked, genuinely surprised. Uh-huh. Daddy showed me how to finger knit. It's not perfect, but Miss Robertson says perfect is boring anyway. Maya took a huge bite of sandwich, cheese stretching comically from her mouth to the bread. Maya, manners, Landon reminded gently. Sorry. She chewed thoroughly before swallowing. Do you have kids, Miss Lila? The question landed like a stone in still water. Lila set down her spoon carefully. No, I don't. Do you want them? Maya, Landon said, a note of warning in his voice. It's okay, Lila said, though her throat had tightened. I used to think I would, but I got busy with work, and then there wasn't time, and then it just became something I'd think about later, except later never came. Maya considered this with the seriousness only a 7-year-old could muster. That's sad. Maya. No, she's right, Lila interrupted. It is sad. I made a lot of choices that seemed smart at the time, but looking back, I'm not sure they were the right ones. Landon caught her eye across the table, and something unspoken passed between them. Understanding, maybe, or recognition that they'd both sacrificed more than they'd intended for lives that hadn't quite turned out as planned. After lunch, Maya insisted on opening her presents, even though there were only two. The first was a set of colored pencils, the good kind with soft lead that blended beautifully. The second was a book, well-loved and clearly second-hand, about a girl who discovers a magical library. I already read it, but Daddy said I could read it again because good stories get better the second time, Maya explained, clutching the book to her chest. Your daddy is very wise, Lila said, watching Landon's ears turn slightly red. What about you? Maya asked. Don't you have presents? Lila thought about her penthouse, the walk-in closet filled with designer clothes she barely wore, the jewelry safe containing pieces worth more than this entire building. None of it felt real anymore. I have everything I need right here, she said, and was startled to realize she meant it. That evening, after Maya had fallen asleep on the couch halfway through an animated Christmas movie, Landon carried her to her room. Lila watched from the doorway as he tucked the blankets around his daughter, smoothing hair from her forehead with such tenderness it made Lila's chest ache. She's lucky to have you, Lila said when Landon emerged, pulling the door partially closed behind him. I'm the lucky one. She saved my life. He moved to the kitchen and started washing the dinner dishes by hand. The apartment didn't have a dishwasher. Can I help? Lila asked. You should be resting. I'm tired of resting, please. Landon handed her a dish towel. They worked in comfortable silence for a few minutes, him washing, her drying. It was such a mundane task, but there was something meditative about it, peaceful. You said Maya saved your life, Lila ventured. What did you mean? Landon was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, without looking at her, he began to speak. My wife, Sarah, died 3 years ago. Car accident. Black ice on Highway 17. She was coming home from her sister's place, maybe 10 minutes from here. A truck crossed the median and that was it. Instant. Lila's hands stilled on the plate she was drying. Landon, I'm so sorry. Maya was 4. She didn't really understand at first. She kept asking when Mommy was coming home, and I didn't know how to explain that she wasn't, that she was never coming home again. He scrubbed at a pot with more force than necessary. I fell apart after the funeral, kept going to work, kept feeding Maya, kept doing all the surface-level stuff. But inside, I was drowning. Some nights I'd sit in the truck in the parking lot for hours, just staring at nothing, thinking how easy it would be to just keep driving and never come back. But you didn't. Because of her. He gestured toward Maya's room. One night, maybe 6 months after Sarah died, Maya woke up crying. I went to her room and she was sitting up in bed, holding this ratty stuffed elephant Sarah had given her, and she said, Daddy, are you going to disappear, too? His voice cracked slightly. She was 4 years old and already terrified that everyone she loved was going to leave her, and I realized that if I gave up, if I let the grief win, I'd be doing exactly what she was afraid of. So I made a choice. I chose to stay, to fight through it, to be present, even when being present felt impossible. Lila set down the dish towel and placed her hand on his arm. He looked at her, eyes red, rimmed but dry. She saved me by needing me, he said simply. By giving me a reason to get up every morning. I owe her everything. You're a good father, Lila said. Sarah would be proud. I hope so. I try. He turned back to the sink, but she caught the small smile tugging at his mouth. What about you? What's your story? And I don't mean the corporate drama. I mean the real story. The one underneath all that. Lila leaned against the counter, considering how much to share. But something about this man, this stranger who'd opened his home to her without hesitation, made her want to be honest. My father started Hartwell Industries in his garage when I was 6, she began. He built it from nothing, poured every ounce of himself into it. By the time I was in college, it was worth millions. By the time I graduated, billions. That's impressive. It is, but it also meant he was never home. Every birthday, every school play, every moment that mattered, he was at the office. My mother left when I was 12. She said she was tired of being married to a ghost. Landon rinsed the last plate and turned to face her fully. And you? I told myself I'd be different, that I'd find balance. But then Dad got sick, pancreatic cancer, and suddenly I was 26 and running a company I barely understood. He died 2 months later. His last words to me were, "Don't let them take it. Promise me." So you promised. I promised, and I spent the next decade making sure Hartwell stayed exactly as he'd envisioned it. I worked 80-hour weeks. I sacrificed relationships, friendships, any semblance of a normal life, all to keep a promise to a dying man. She laughed, but it came out bitter. And now I'm about to lose it anyway. Bennett is going to take everything my father built and turn it into just another corporate acquisition. All those years, all that sacrifice, for nothing. It wasn't for nothing, Landon said firmly. You honored your father's memory. You kept his dream alive for a decade. That matters, even if the ending isn't what you hoped for. Lila looked at him, at this man who worked night shifts at a diner and lived in a rundown apartment, and somehow understood more about what mattered than anyone in her boardroom ever had. How did you get so wise? She asked. I'm not wise. I'm just tired of pretending life is anything other than messy and hard and occasionally beautiful. He smiled. Besides, wisdom is overrated. I'll take kindness any day. You're both kind and wise. Then I'm a rare breed. He hung up the dish towel. You should get some sleep. Tomorrow we can figure out your next move. But as Lila made her way to the bedroom, she realized she didn't want to think about next moves or corporate strategies or hostile takeovers. For the first time in years, she just wanted to be present in this moment, in this small apartment with these two people who'd shown her more genuine humanity in one day than she'd experienced in a lifetime of business deals. Maybe that was what she'd been missing all along. Not success or power or control, but connection. Real, honest, unfiltered connection with people who saw her as more than a title or a bank account. She fell asleep that night, not in fear or anxiety, but in something close to peace. The day after Christmas dawned clear and cold. Lila woke to the sound of laughter drifting through the thin walls of the apartment. She dressed in borrowed clothes, a faded sweatshirt and yoga pants that Landon had dug out from somewhere, and followed the sound to the kitchen. Maya was standing on a step stool at the counter, flour dusting her nose, while Landon guided her hands through the process of kneading dough. You have to fold it like this, he was saying. See? Push, fold, turn. Push, fold, turn. It's squishy. Maya giggled, pressing her palms into the dough with excessive enthusiasm. Good morning, Lila said from the doorway. They both looked up, matching smiles on their faces. We're making cinnamon rolls, Maya announced. Daddy says they're a day after Christmas tradition. More like a, we have basic ingredients and need to use them before they go bad tradition. Landon corrected, but his eyes were warm. Want to help? Lila had never made cinnamon rolls in her life. Her kitchen in the penthouse was pristine, mostly because she never cooked. Meals were catered or ordered in, fuel rather than pleasure. I don't know how, she admitted. Perfect. Maya's the expert. She'll teach you. Landon lifted his daughter down from the step stool and gestured for Lila to take her place. For the next hour, Lila learned the basics of dough making under the enthusiastic instruction of a 7-year-old who took her teaching duties very seriously. She learned that you couldn't rush the rising process, that cinnamon sugar had to be spread evenly or you'd get pockets of spice, and that the best part was licking the bowl afterward, no matter what anyone said about raw dough. When the rolls finally emerged from the oven, golden and fragrant, they were misshapen and slightly burnt on one side. They were perfect. Best cinnamon rolls I've ever had, Lila declared, taking her first bite. You're just saying that, Maya said, but she beamed with pride. I'm not. I've had cinnamon rolls at 5-star hotels in 3 different countries. These are better, because they were made with care, she realized. Made with hands that weren't paid to create perfection, but chose to create something anyway. Made in a kitchen filled with laughter instead of silence. Later that afternoon, Maya convinced Lila to go outside and help build a snow fort in the small courtyard behind the Bradford apartments. Landon watched from the back steps, sipping coffee and occasionally shouting directions that both of them ignored. Make the wall thicker, Maya instructed, packing snow with her small mittened hands. It has to be able to withstand attacks. Attacks from whom? Lila asked, amused. From invaders, obviously. Maya rolled her eyes in the way only a 7-year-old could, as if the answer should have been self-evident. They worked side by side, Lila's expensive manicure long forgotten as her fingers went numb in Maya's borrowed gloves. Her back ached from bending over, her cheeks burned from the cold, and she couldn't remember the last time she'd felt this alive. "Can I ask you something?" Maya said suddenly, her voice dropping to a more serious tone. "Of course. Why were you so sad when Daddy found you?" Lila paused, a handful of snow suspended in midair. "How did you explain corporate betrayal and existential crisis to a 7-year-old? "I was going through a hard time," she said carefully. "Sometimes grown-ups have problems that feel too big to solve. And when that happens, it's easy to forget that there are people who care." Maya nodded sagely. "Daddy was like that after Mommy died. He forgot people cared about him too. He told me about your mom. I'm sorry you lost her." "Me too. I don't remember her as much as I used to." Maya's lower lip trembled slightly. "Sometimes I can't remember what her voice sounded like. It makes me feel bad." Lila set down the snow and turned to face the little girl fully. "That doesn't make you bad. That makes you human. Our brains can only hold so much, and sometimes the details fade. But the important stuff, the way she made you feel, the love she had for you, that never goes away. That stays forever." Maya thought about this, then threw her arms around Lila's waist in a sudden, fierce hug. "I'm glad Daddy found you. You're nice." Lila hugged her back, blinking against the unexpected sting of tears. "I'm glad he found me too." That evening, after Maya had gone to bed, Landon and Lila sat in the living room with mugs of hot chocolate made from packets that were probably expired but tasted fine anyway. The plastic Christmas tree lights cast a soft glow across the room. "She's getting attached to you," Landon said quietly. "Maya, I mean." "I know. Is that a problem?" "I don't know yet." He turned his mug in his hands. "She doesn't let people in easily. After Sarah died, she built walls. It took months before she'd even talk about her mom. And now here you are, and she's hugging you and teaching you to make cinnamon rolls and acting like you've always been here." "I can pull back if you want," Lila offered, though the thought made her chest tighten. "That's not what I'm saying." Landon met her eyes. "I'm saying I need to know what your plan is, because eventually you're going to have to go back to your life. And when you do, Maya's going to be devastated if she's built this attachment and you just disappear. I wouldn't do that to her. Not intentionally, maybe. But your world and ours, they don't overlap. You're a CEO. You live in a penthouse. You run $1 billion company. We're this." He gestured around the modest apartment. "Once you sort out your business problems, you'll go back to board meetings and galas and whatever else your life involves, and will be a nice memory of that time you needed help." Lila set down her mug and leaned forward. "Is that what you think? That I'm just biding my time here until I can return to my real life? Aren't you?" She wanted to argue, but he wasn't wrong. She would have to deal with Hartwell eventually. She couldn't hide in this apartment forever, but the thought of returning to that world, to the backstabbing and corporate maneuvering and endless performance of being Lila Curtis, CEO, made her feel physically ill. "I don't know what I'm doing," she admitted. "For the first time in my life, I have no plan, no strategy, no 5-year projections. I'm just here, in this moment, and trying to figure out who I am without all the titles and expectations." "And who are you?" Landon asked. "Without all that?" Lila looked at him, at this man who'd saved her life and asked for nothing in return, who worked brutal hours to provide for his daughter and still found time to teach her to make cinnamon rolls and build snow forts, who'd lost the love of his life and kept going because someone needed him to. "I think I'm someone who's been performing for so long. I forgot there was a real person underneath," she said. "Someone who chose ambition over connection, strategy over honesty, and success over happiness. And I don't know if I like that person very much." "Then be someone different. It's not that simple." "Why not?" Landon challenged. "You're the CEO of a company. You make decisions worth millions every day. Surely you can decide who you want to be." "Those are business decisions. This is my life." "What's the difference?" Lila opened her mouth to answer, then closed it. What was the difference? She'd spent so long treating her life like a business strategy that she'd forgotten they weren't the same thing. You couldn't spreadsheet your way to happiness. You couldn't have a board meeting about meaning. "I don't know how to be different," she confessed. "Start small. Stay here tomorrow. Help Maya with her jigsaw puzzle. Make terrible cinnamon rolls. Watch a movie. Just be present without thinking 3 moves ahead." "And then what?" "And then you do it again the next day, and the day after that, until eventually, being present becomes more natural than performing." Lila studied him in the soft Christmas lights. "You make it sound easy. It's not. It's the hardest thing in the world, but it's worth it." They sat in silence for a while, the only sound the occasional creak of the building settling and the distant hum of traffic. Finally, Lila spoke. "Can I tell you something I've never told anyone?" "Of course." The night of the gala, before I heard about Bennett's plan, I was standing on the balcony watching everyone inside. All these people in expensive clothes drinking expensive wine, and I felt so separate from all of it, like I was watching my own life through glass. And I thought, is this it? Is this what I sacrificed everything for? She wrapped her hands around her mug. That's when I heard Bennett rehearsing his announcement, and honestly, part of me was almost relieved, because it meant I didn't have to keep pretending anymore. The decision was being made for me. You wanted to lose your company? No. But I wanted to stop carrying it alone. I wanted permission to walk away from something I'd built my entire identity around. Does that make sense? Landon nodded slowly. More than you know. After Sarah died, I wanted someone to tell me it was okay to stop being strong, that I could fall apart and the world wouldn't end. But no one did. So I kept going because that's what you do when you don't have a choice. Did it get easier? Eventually. Not better exactly, just easier to carry. Lila felt tears building behind her eyes, but she didn't fight them this time. She let them fall, silently, while Landon sat with her in the dim light of a plastic Christmas tree, offering no solutions, just presence. And somehow, that was everything. 3 days after Christmas, Lila's carefully constructed sanctuary came crashing down. It started with a news alert on Landon's phone while he was making breakfast. His face went pale as he scrolled through the article. Then he silently handed the phone to Lila. The headline read, "Hartwell Industries, CEO, missing since Christmas Eve gala, foul play suspected." Below it was her official corporate headshot, hair perfectly styled, wearing a navy suit and the pearl earrings her father had given her. She looked like a stranger. The article detailed her disappearance, the abandoned purse found in an alley near the warehouse district, the blood evidence, and the massive search effort being coordinated by local police and private security. Bennett Voss was quoted extensively, expressing his deep concern for Lila's safety and offering a $50,000 reward for information leading to her whereabouts. "He's covering," Lila said, her voice hollow. "He's playing the concerned business partner while consolidating his takeover. If I'm declared missing or deceased, he can push through the merger without any resistance. You have to come forward," Landon said. "You have to let people know you're alive." Before Lila could respond, Maya appeared in the kitchen doorway, still in her pajamas. "What's wrong? You both look scared." "Nothing, sweetheart," Landon said quickly. "Go get dressed. We'll have breakfast in a minute." But Maya's attention had already locked onto the phone in Lila's hand. Her eyes widened as she recognized the photo. "That's you. You're on the news. Are you famous?" "Maya," I said, "go get dressed." "But Daddy, now please." Something in Landon's tone made Maya's face crumple. She turned and ran to her room, slamming the door behind her. The sound echoed through the small apartment like a gunshot. Landon closed his eyes and exhaled slowly. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have snapped at her." "This is my fault," Lila said. "I should have dealt with this days ago. I was being selfish, hiding here, pretending I could just step away from my life." "You were healing. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Because right now, it feels like I was just running away. Again." She set the phone down with shaking hands. "People are looking for me. Resources are being wasted on a search when I'm perfectly fine. And Maya just saw her father lie to her because of me. I didn't lie. I just didn't explain." Semantics. They stared at each other across the kitchen table, the comfortable ease of the past few days evaporating like steam. Reality had found them, and it wasn't kind. "What are you going to do?" Landon asked finally. "I don't know. If I come forward now, Bennett wins. He'll spin my disappearance as a mental breakdown, evidence that I'm unfit to lead. The board will use it to justify the merger. Everything my father built will be gone within 6 months. And if you don't come forward, then I'm a missing person indefinitely. My assets get frozen. The company operates under interim leadership, probably someone Bennett controls. Eventually, I'll be declared legally dead, and he gets everything anyway." Landon leaned back in his chair. "Sounds like he wins either way." "He does. That's the genius of it. He engineered a situation where every choice I make leads to the same outcome." Lila laughed bitterly. "I've been outmaneuvered, and I didn't even see it coming." A soft knock interrupted them. Maya stood in the hallway, now dressed, her face tear-stained. "I'm sorry I slammed my door." "Come here, baby." Landon said, opening his arms. Maya climbed into his lap, and he held her close. I'm sorry I snapped at you. That wasn't fair. Is Miss Lila in trouble? Yes, Lila said before Landon could deflect. I'm in trouble, and I need to figure out how to fix it. Maya looked at her with those two wise eyes. My teacher says when you don't know what to do, you should do the thing that helps the most people, not just yourself. Your teacher is very smart. So what would help the most people? Lila considered the question. If she came forward, the search would end, saving resources and manpower. Her employees, hundreds of them, would know their CEO was alive and potentially able to fight for their jobs. Her assistant, Kyle, who'd worked for her for 6 years and probably hadn't slept since her disappearance, would have answers. But coming forward also meant facing Bennett, the hostile board, and a media circus that would dissect every moment of her disappearance. It meant returning to a war she'd already lost, armed with nothing but the truth and a deeply bruised sense of pride. I need to make a phone call, she said. Landon handed her his phone without question. She stepped into the bedroom and closed the door. Her hands shook as she dialed Kyle's personal number, one she'd memorized years ago for emergencies exactly like this. He answered on the first ring. Hello? Kyle, it's me. Dead silence. Then, oh my God. Lila, is this really you? It's really me. Where are you? Are you okay? Do you need medical attention? I'll send a car right now. Just tell me where. Kyle, stop. I'm fine. I'm safe. I just need you to listen. She could hear him breathing, fast and shallow, probably fighting back tears or anger or both. Do you have any idea what the last 3 days have been like? The police think you were kidnapped or murdered. Bennett is acting like a grieving widow. The board is in chaos. I've been losing my mind. I know, and I'm sorry, but I need you to do something for me, and I need you to trust me without asking questions yet. Anything. I need you to schedule an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning. Tell them I'm alive and returning to make a formal statement. Don't give them any other details. Just that. Lila, what's going on? Where have you been? I'll explain everything tomorrow. But Kyle, I need you to do one more thing. I need you to compile every piece of documentation we have on Bennett's shell companies and stock purchases. All of it. Every transaction, every filing, every email. Can you do that? Of course. But why? Because I'm not going down without a fight. And if Bennett wants to play dirty, I'll show him just how dirty things can get. She ended the call before he could ask more questions. When she emerged from the bedroom, Landon and Maya were sitting together on the couch, speaking in low voices. They both looked up as she entered. I'm going back, Lila announced. Tomorrow. I'm going to face the board and fight for my company. Are you? Sure? Landon asked. No, but I'm going to do it anyway. She sat down in the armchair across from them. Maya, your teacher was right. I have to do the thing that helps the most people. And running away, hiding, pretending my problems will solve themselves, that's not helping anyone. Will you come back? Maya asked, her voice small. After you go fight the bad people, will you come back to visit us? Lila's throat tightened. I'd like that very much. If your dad says it's okay. Landon met her eyes over Maya's head. Something passed between them, an understanding that whatever had developed over these few days was real, even if it was complicated. You're always welcome here, he said simply. That night, Lila lay awake in Landon's bed for the last time, staring at the ceiling and trying to prepare herself for what was coming. She'd spent years in boardrooms, negotiating deals worth millions. She'd faced hostile investors, aggressive competitors, and skeptical journalists. But none of that had prepared her for walking back into her life after walking out of it so completely. Tomorrow, she would be Lila Curtis, CEO of Hartwell Industries. Again, she would put on armor made of designer suits and practiced composure. She would face Bennett and the board and fight for everything her father had built. But tonight, she was just Lila, a woman who'd learned to make cinnamon rolls and build snow forts, who'd been seen and accepted by people who had nothing to gain from her except her company. And maybe that was enough to carry her through whatever came next. Dawn broke cold and grey over Ashwood. Lila stood at the bedroom window, already dressed in clothes Kyle had sent over the night before. A charcoal suit, silk blouse, heels that felt like foreign objects after days in borrowed sweatpants. She looked like herself again, the polished version everyone expected. But the woman staring back from the reflection felt like a stranger. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. It's me. Landon's voice came through the door. "Come in." He entered carrying 2 mugs of coffee, one in each hand. He'd clearly been up for hours already, his hair damp from the shower, wearing his diner uniform for the afternoon shift he'd picked up. "Thought you might need this," he said, offering her a mug. "Thank you." She took it, grateful for something to hold. "Is Maya awake?" "Still sleeping. I let her stay up late watching movies. Figured she'd need the distraction." He leaned against the dresser, studying her. "You look ready." "I look the part," she corrected. "Ready is something else entirely. Want to talk about it?" Lila moved to sit on the edge of the bed, and Landon joined her, leaving a respectful distance between them. She sipped her coffee, gathering her thoughts. "I keep thinking about my father," she began. "The last conversation we had before he died. He was in the hospital, barely conscious from the medication, but he grabbed my hand with whatever strength he had left and made me promise. 'Don't let them take it,' he said. 'Everything I built, every sacrifice I made, was for you. Promise me you'll protect it.'" "That's a heavy burden to carry," Landon said quietly. "It is, but I took it on willingly. I thought if I could just be strong enough, smart enough, ruthless enough, I could honor his memory. I could be worthy of everything he'd sacrificed." Her voice wavered. "But the truth is, I don't think I ever asked myself if it was what I wanted. I just knew it was what he wanted for me." "And what do you want?" It was such a simple question, and yet Lila realized she'd never seriously considered it. Every decision she'd made for the past decade had been filtered through the lens of what her father would have done, what the board expected, what the shareholders demanded. Her own desires had never factored into the equation. "I don't know," she admitted. "Isn't that pathetic? I'm 42 years old, and I don't know what I want out of life." "It's not pathetic. It's honest." Landon set his mug on the nightstand. "After Sarah died, everyone kept asking me what I needed. What can we do? How can we help?" And I'd give them practical answers, bring meals, watch Maya, help with bills. But nobody asked what I actually wanted, because what I wanted was impossible. I wanted my wife back. I wanted my daughter to have her mother. I wanted to undo the whole thing. "How did you move forward?" "I stopped asking what I wanted and started asking what I could live with. Could I live with never dating again? Yes. Could I live with working nights and barely seeing Maya? No. Could I live with selling our house and moving to a smaller place? Yes. Could I live with my daughter thinking I'd abandoned her emotionally? Absolutely not." He turned to face her fully. "So I made choices based on what I could live with. And slowly, over time, those choices started to feel less like compromises and more like a life I'd chosen." Lila absorbed this, feeling something shift inside her. "I can't live with giving up without a fight. Even if I lose, I need to know I tried. Does that make sense?" "Perfect sense. But I also can't live with going back to the person I was before, the one who worked 80-hour weeks and measured her worth by profit margins, the one who had an assistant but not a friend, the one who'd forgotten what homemade cinnamon rolls tasted like." Landon smiled slightly. "Then don't be that person." "It's not that simple." "Why not?" "Because that world demands it. You don't get to be CEO of a major company by setting boundaries and prioritizing personal happiness. You get there by sacrificing everything else. Then maybe you don't need to be CEO anymore." The words hung in the air between them, radical and terrifying. Lila had spent so long defining herself by her position that the thought of stepping away felt like erasing her entire identity. Your father is gone," Landon said, not unkindly. "And I'm sure he loved you, but he's not the one living your life now. You are, and you get to decide what that looks like, regardless of what promises you made to a dying man." Tears spilled down Lila's cheeks before she could stop them. "He gave up everything for me. His time, his health, his marriage. How do I honor that if I walk away from what he built? By living a life he'd actually want for you. Do you think he wanted you to be miserable? To sacrifice your happiness the same way he sacrificed his? He wanted me to be successful. Success isn't just money and power, Lila. It's also waking up and not dreading the day ahead. It's having people in your life who see you as more than a job title. It's building something that matters, even if it's small." She looked at him through her tears. "How did you get so wise about things you've never experienced? Pain is a hell of a teacher, and I've had plenty of lessons." He reached over and took her hand, his palm warm and calloused. "You saved my life once. Did you know that?" "What?" "I didn't. 3 nights ago, Maya woke up from a nightmare. She came to my room crying, and when I asked what was wrong, she said she dreamed I'd disappeared like Mommy did, that she'd woken up and I was gone. His grip on her hand tightened. I held her and promised I'd never leave, but after she went back to sleep, I sat there thinking about how close I'd come to breaking that promise, how many nights I'd thought about just not coming home. And then I thought about you, about how you'd literally walked away from your entire life because the weight of it had become unbearable. I'm not sure where you're going with this, Lila said softly. I'm saying that having you here, seeing you choose to fight for yourself instead of just giving up, it reminded me why I made that same choice 3 years ago. It reminded me that staying, trying, fighting, even when everything feels impossible, that's what courage actually looks like. So thank you for reminding me of that. Lila couldn't speak. She simply leaned forward and rested her forehead against his shoulder, letting herself be held by someone who understood what it meant to carry grief and keep moving forward anyway. They sat like that for a long time, two people who'd learned the hard way that strength wasn't about never breaking. It was about breaking and choosing to piece yourself back together, over and over, until eventually the cracks became part of your story instead of the end of it. Finally, Lila pulled back and wiped her eyes. I should finish getting ready. Kyle is sending a car at 8. Will you call us? Let us know how it goes. If you want me to. We want you to. He stood and moved toward the door, then paused. Lila. Yes? Whatever happens today, you're not alone in this. You know that, right? She nodded, not trusting her voice. After he left, Lila finished her makeup, covering the evidence of tears with practiced efficiency. She pinned her hair back, fastened her watch, slipped on her heels. By the time she walked out of the bedroom, she looked every inch the powerful CEO the world expected. But underneath the armor, she was still just Lila. A woman who'd learned to make cinnamon rolls and build snow forts. A woman who'd been seen and accepted by two people who had nothing to gain from knowing her. And maybe, just maybe, that was the strongest version of herself she'd ever been. The Hartwell Industries headquarters rose 30 stories above downtown, all glass and steel and corporate ambition. Lila hadn't set foot in the building since the night of the gala, and now, sitting in the back of the town car Kyle had sent, she felt her chest tighten with each block they traveled closer. We're here, Miss Curtis, the driver said, pulling up to the main entrance. Through the tinted windows, she could see the lobby, already buzzing with activity despite the early hour. Security guards, reporters, camera crews. Bennett had clearly tipped off the media that she was returning today. Of course he had. This would be his show as much as hers. Her phone buzzed. A text from Landon. You've got this. Maya says to picture everyone in their underwear. Not sure that's helpful, but there you go. Despite everything, Lila smiled. She typed back, tell Maya that's the best advice I've received all morning. Kyle met her at the entrance, looking like he hadn't slept in days. His normally immaculate suit was wrinkled, his eyes red-rimmed. When he saw her, his professional composure cracked. Don't you ever do that to me again, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I won't. I promise. She squeezed his arm. Are we ready? Conference room A full board. Bennett arrived an hour ago with his attorneys. He knows you're coming, but not what you're planning. Good. Let's keep it that way. They moved through the lobby, security clearing a path through the reporters, shouting questions. Lila kept her head high, her expression neutral, giving them nothing. She'd learned years ago that silence was often more powerful than any prepared statement. The elevator ride to the executive floor felt both endless and too short. Kyle briefed her in clipped sentences. Board composition, likely allegiances, the financial documents he'd compiled overnight, showing Bennett's stock manipulation. It might not be enough, he warned as they approached the conference room. Even with proof of his tactics, he still has the votes. I know, but I need them to see who he really is, what he's really doing. They deserve to know the truth before they hand over my father's company to a man who sees it as nothing but an acquisition. Kyle opened the door. The conference room fell silent. 12 board members sat around the massive table, all of them staring at her like she'd returned from the dead, which, in a way, she had. Bennett Voss sat at the far end, perfectly composed in his designer suit, his silver hair styled immaculately. He stood as she entered, his expression carefully crafted to show concern. Lila, thank God you're safe. We've all been so worried. Spare me the performance, Bennett. We both know why I'm here. She moved to the head of the table, her father's seat, the one she'd occupied for 10 years. Kyle set up a laptop and projector behind her. "I owe all of you an explanation," Lila began, addressing the board. "On Christmas Eve, I left the gala without notice. I wandered the city for hours and was eventually assaulted and robbed. I spent the last few days recovering in a safe location while I decided how to move forward. You should have called the police immediately," Bennett interjected smoothly. "We've had search teams looking for you. Resources that could have been better used if you'd simply let someone know you were alive." "You're right, and I apologize for that, but I needed time to think about what I'd learned that night." She nodded to Kyle, who pulled up the first slide. "Financial records, shell company filings, stock purchases, dating back 18 months. These documents show a systematic effort to acquire controlling interest in Hartwell Industries through third-party purchases designed to circumvent disclosure requirements. Bennett has spent the last year and a half positioning himself to take over this company, and he planned to announce it at the gala as a fait accompli." Murmurs rippled around the table. Several board members leaned forward, studying the documents. Bennett's expression never wavered. "These are legitimate business transactions," he said calmly. "There's nothing illegal about purchasing stock in a company you believe in. No, there's not. But there is something deeply unethical about doing it in secret while pretending to be a collaborative partner, about manipulating board members, making promises you have no intention of keeping, all to acquire something that isn't yours to take." She pulled up another slide. Emails between Bennett and 3 board members, discussing transitioning leadership and restructuring legacy operations. "Legacy operations," Lila said, her voice hard. "That's what you're calling the research division my father started. The one that employs 200 people. The one that's not as immediately profitable as your ventures, but serves an actual mission beyond quarterly earnings." One of the board members, Patricia Drummond, removed her glasses. "Lila, even if what you're saying is true, the fact remains that Bennett's proposal would increase shareholder value significantly. We have a fiduciary duty." "To what? To whom?" Lila interrupted. "To shareholders who'll cash out and move on, or to the people who've built this company, who've dedicated their careers to the vision my father had." She took a breath, steadying herself. "I've spent 10 years running this company the way I thought my father would want. I've made every decision through the lens of what would he do, and in the process, I lost sight of something important. What this company actually means beyond profit margins and stock prices." She clicked to the final slide. Photos. The research team celebrating a breakthrough, the Employee Appreciation Day from last summer, the scholarship program for local students interested in technology. This is what Bennett's restructuring would eliminate. Not because it's failing, but because it's not profitable enough, fast enough. Because in his world, value is only measured in dollars, not impact. Bennett stood, his composure finally cracking. "This is an emotional appeal, nothing more. You're asking the board to choose sentimentality over sound business strategy. No, I'm asking them to choose what kind of company they want to be part of. One that treats people as assets to be liquidated when convenient, or one that remembers why it exists in the first place." The room was silent. Lila could see the calculation happening behind each board member's eyes, weighing loyalty against profit, legacy against opportunity. Finally, she said the words she'd never imagined saying, "I'm also hereby tendering my resignation as CEO, effective in 6 months. I'll stay long enough to ensure a smooth transition and to identify a successor who shares the company's foundational values. But I won't remain in a position where I'm constantly fighting against people who should be allies." Gasps around the table. Bennett's eyes widened, then narrowed. He hadn't expected this. "However," Lila continued, "I'm proposing that my voting shares, which represent 30% of the company, be placed in a trust with specific provisions about how Hartwell Industries operates. Provisions that protect the research division, the scholarship program, and the employee profit-sharing structure my father established." She looked directly at Bennett. "You can have the company, but you can't have its soul. Not as long as I have any say in it." Patricia spoke first. "I move that we table the merger discussion pending legal review of MissWWW.com, Curtis's proposal." "Seconded," another board member added quickly. Bennett's face had gone red. "This is absurd. You can't just—" "Actually, I can. It's my company. Or it was." Lila gathered her papers. "Kyle will distribute the full proposal to all of you by end of day. I suggest you read it carefully before making any decisions." She walked out of the conference room with her head high, not waiting for dismissal or approval. Kyle hurried after her, barely containing his shock. "You just resigned," he said in the elevator. "I did." "You actually did it?" "I did." She smiled, and it felt genuine for the first time in years. "And Kyle?" "It feels right." 3 weeks later, Lila stood in the lobby of the Bradford Apartments, holding a box of fancy chocolates in one hand and a gift bag in the other. She'd been back to Ashwood twice since the board meeting, short visits squeezed between negotiations with attorneys and meetings with potential successors for the CEO position. But today was different. Today, she'd come to stay. She climbed the familiar stairs to the 3rd floor, her heart hammering in a way that had nothing to do with the physical exertion. When she knocked on apartment 3C, she heard an excited squeal from inside. "She's here! Daddy, she's here!" The door flew open, and Maya launched herself at Lila's legs with the full force of 7-year-old enthusiasm. "You came back. You said you would, and you did." "I always keep my promises," Lila said, crouching to hug her properly. "I brought you something. Is it chocolate? Please say, it's chocolate." "Maya, let her get inside first," Landon said from the doorway, smiling. He'd changed out of his work clothes into jeans and a sweater that made him look younger, less burdened. "Hi." "Hi." Lila stood, suddenly nervous. "Is this okay? I know I should have called first, but I wanted to surprise you." "It's more than okay. Come in." The apartment looked the same, small and worn, but clean and warm. The plastic Christmas tree was gone, replaced by a vase of fresh flowers on the coffee table. Lila recognized them as grocery store flowers, nothing fancy, but the gesture made her chest tighten. "Those are pretty," she said. Maya insisted. "She's been planning your visit for days." Landon took the box and bag from her. "What's all this?" "Chocolate for Maya, obviously, and something for you." He opened the bag and pulled out a leather journal, the kind with thick cream pages and a ribbon bookmark. His expression softened. "Lila, this is too much." "It's not. You told me you used to write after Sarah died, that it helped you process things. I thought maybe you'd want to start again." He ran his hand over the cover, clearly touched. "Thank you. Can I have my chocolate now?" Maya asked impatiently. "After dinner," Landon said. "Which reminds me, I should check on the pasta. Lila, are you staying? If the invitation's still open." "It's always open." Dinner was simple, spaghetti with jarred sauce and garlic bread, but Lila had never enjoyed a meal more. Maya talked non-stop about school, about the snow fort that had finally melted, about the new library book she was reading. Landon interjected occasionally with corrections or clarifications, his eyes constantly moving to Lila, as if to confirm she was really there. After Maya had eaten her allowed portion of chocolate and been sent to brush her teeth, Lila helped Landon with the dishes. They worked in comfortable silence, falling into the rhythm they'd established during her first stay. "The board approved my proposal," Lila said finally. "The trust is being established, and I've identified 2 internal candidates for CEO. Both of them understand the company's mission beyond profit." "That's good. You must be relieved." "I am, but also terrified." She dried a plate carefully. "I've been CEO for 10 years. It's been my entire identity, and now I'm choosing to walk away from it. Are you having second thoughts?" "No, but I am having first thoughts about what comes next." She set down the dish towel and turned to face him. "Landon, I've been offered several consulting positions, high-paying, prestigious, based in major cities. I could work remotely for any of them from anywhere." "That's great. You deserve—" "I want to stay in Ashwood." He froze, plate in hand. "What?" "I want to stay here. I've looked at apartments, small ones, near the library. I thought maybe I could do some consulting work part-time and spend the rest volunteering, maybe starting a business, mentorship program for local students, something that actually means something." Landon set the plate down slowly. "Lila, you can't upend your entire life because of a few days you spent here. I'm not. I'm upending my life because those few days showed me what I'd been missing. Connection, purpose, people who see me as more than a bank account or a business deal." She stepped closer to him. "I'm staying because for the first time in years, I want to wake up in the morning. I want to build something that matters, even if it's small. I want to be somewhere I'm not constantly performing." "And you think Ashwood is that place?" "I think anywhere could be that place if I'm with the right people." They stared at each other, the small kitchen suddenly feeling even smaller. Landon's expression was unreadable, cycling through surprise, concern, and something that looked like hope. "What about Maya?" he asked quietly. "She's already attached to you. If you stay and then change your mind—" "I won't change my mind. I'm done running, Landon. I'm done making decisions based on fear or obligation or what other people expect. I'm choosing this. I'm choosing you and Maya and this life, if you'll have me." He reached for her hand, his calloused fingers wrapping around hers. "You're sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." "Daddy?" Maya's voice came from the hallway. "Is Miss Lila staying forever now?" They both turned to find her standing there in her pajamas, clutching the stuffed elephant Sarah had given her, her eyes wide and hopeful. Landon looked at Lila, a question in his eyes. She nodded. "Yes, sweetheart," he said, his voice thick. "I think she might be." Maya whooped and ran forward, crashing into both of them with enough force to make them stumble. Landon caught them both, his arms wrapping around Lila and his daughter, holding them close. "This is the best day ever," Maya declared, her voice muffled against Lila's stomach. "Better than Christmas, even." Lila laughed, tears streaming down her face, and met Landon's eyes over Maya's head. He was crying too, she realized, silent tears tracking down his cheeks while he smiled wider than she'd ever seen. "Thank you," he mouthed. She shook her head. "Thank you, for finding me, for seeing me, for giving me a reason to choose life over just existing." That night, after Maya had finally been coaxed into bed with promises that Lila would be there in the morning, Landon and Lila sat on the couch together. His arm was around her shoulders, her head resting against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "I know this is fast," she said quietly. "I know we barely know each other. I know it's crazy to make life-changing decisions based on a few weeks." "It is crazy," he agreed. "Completely insane. But sometimes the crazy decisions are the right ones. Sometimes you meet someone and you just know they're going to change your life. I knew it the night I found you in the snow. I didn't know how or why, but I knew." Lila tilted her head to look at him. "I was half dead and covered in blood. That's when you knew. That's when I knew. Call it instinct or fate or whatever you want. But yeah, I knew." He pressed a kiss to her forehead. "And for what it's worth, I'm glad my instinct was right." "Me too." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the lights from the street cast patterns on the wall. Outside, Ashwood was settling into its evening rhythm, small and unremarkable and perfect. Lila closed her eyes and let herself fully relax for the first time in years. She didn't know exactly what the future held. She didn't have a 5-year plan or a strategic roadmap, but she had this: a small apartment, a kind man, a bright-eyed girl, and the absolute certainty that she was finally, truly home, and that was more than enough. 1 year later, on another snowy Christmas Eve, Lila Curtis stood in the community center on the edge of Ashwood, watching 20 local teenagers present their business plans to a panel of volunteer judges. The program she'd started, called Foundation Forward, had grown beyond anything she'd imagined. What began as mentorship for 5 students had expanded to include workshops, seed funding, and partnerships with 3 regional universities. "Miss Lila, they're ready for you," Kyle said, appearing at her elbow. He'd left Hartwell Industries 6 months ago to help her run the non-profit full-time, trading his corner office for a desk in a converted church basement. He'd never looked happier. She walked to the makeshift stage, but before she could speak, Maya bounded up beside her, wearing a red dress and a confidence that seemed impossible for an 8-year-old. "Can I introduce you?" Maya whispered loudly. Lila smiled and handed her the microphone. Maya cleared her throat with exaggerated importance. "This is Miss Lila Curtis. She used to be a really important CEO, but now she does something better. She helps people find out what they're good at and then helps them do it. Also, she makes really good cinnamon rolls now. Like, really good." "Thank you." The audience laughed as Maya handed back the microphone and skipped off stage. Lila caught Landon's eye in the front row. He was grinning, shaking his head at their daughter's performance. Their daughter. The adoption papers had been finalized 2 months ago. Maya had cried happy tears and insisted on a celebration dinner at the diner where Landon worked, declaring it the fanciest restaurant in the world because Daddy works there. "Thank you, Maya, for that glowing introduction," Lila said, her voice carrying across the packed room. "A year ago, I was lost. I had success by every conventional measure, but I'd forgotten what success actually meant. I'd forgotten that the best investments aren't in stock portfolios but in people, in potential, in giving someone a chance when the world tells them they don't deserve one." She paused, looking at the students seated nervously in the front rows. Each of you standing here tonight took a risk. You believed you had something valuable to offer. You worked hard, asked for help when you needed it, and created something from nothing. That's not just business acumen, that's courage, and I'm honored to support it. After the presentations, after the awards were distributed and the families had gathered for punch and cookies Maya had helped bake, Landon found Lila standing alone by the window, watching snow fall in the lamplight. "Quite a night," he said, slipping his arm around her waist. "It really was." She leaned into him. "I keep thinking about where I was a year ago, literally lying in the snow, ready to give up on everything. And now look at you, running a non-profit, mentoring kids, making terrible cinnamon rolls. Hey, Maya said they were good. Maya is biased. She loves you." He turned her to face him. "We both do. More than you know." Lila's breath caught. They'd said the words before, whispered in quiet moments, but something about tonight felt different, significant. Landon reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Not velvet, not expensive, just a simple wooden box, handmade, with a tiny piano carved on the lid. "I'm not good with fancy speeches," he said, his voice shaking slightly. "But I know that finding you that night wasn't an accident. I know that you walked into our lives and made them bigger, brighter, better. And I know that I want to spend every Christmas Eve for the rest of my life watching you change the world in small, beautiful ways." He opened the box. Inside was a ring, modest but lovely, with a small diamond that caught the light. "Lila Curtis, will you marry me?" She didn't hesitate. "Yes, absolutely yes." He slipped the ring on her finger, and she kissed him, tasting salt from tears she hadn't realized were falling. When they pulled apart, they found Maya watching from the doorway, her hands clasped over her mouth. "Does this mean we're a real family now?" she asked. "We've been a real family for a while, sweetheart," Landon said. "This just makes it official." Maya ran forward and wrapped her arms around both of them. Over her head, Lila met Landon's eyes and saw everything she'd been missing reflected back. Love, purpose, home. A year ago, she'd been lying in the snow, broken and alone, whispering for help she didn't think would come. And it had come in the form of a kind man and his daughter, who saw past the fancy coat to the person underneath. Sometimes miracles arrived in the most ordinary packages. Sometimes being lost was just the first step toward being found. And sometimes the best investment you could ever make was in the people who taught you what it meant to truly live. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.